Reborn, I watched as my childhood sweetheart's white moonlight successfully crashed our wedding. My childhood sweetheart's white moonlight showed up at our wedding. Trying to stop the ceremony, she was stopped outside the villa gates by my fiance's uncle. Refusing to give up, she attempted to climb over the courtyard wall to force her way in, but she slipped, fell, and died instantly. The uncle covered up the incident, and the wedding proceeded as planned. After marriage, my husband learned about the white moonlight's death and grew to despise both me and his uncle. He clawed his way to power, seized control from his uncle, and buried him in debt. He also targeted my family's business, driving my parents to suicide. He brought different women home every night, partied without shame, and even offered me to use business partners to close deals. Finally, he tied both me and his uncle to the rooftop of the Vaughn skyscraper and said coldly, "One of you must jump today to pay for Lila's life. Whoever pushes the other down gets to walk away without hesitation." The uncle said, "Let Elena go," and leapt off the building. I broke free and jumped right after him. When I opened my eyes, I had returned to our wedding day. The white moonlight was trying to rush the villa entrance, but was held back by security. Both the uncle and I arrived at the same time and said in unison, "Let her in." Lila was allowed inside. The moment she entered, she fell to her knees before me, kowtowing desperately, "Please, Elena, give Oliver back to me. You're rich and powerful, you had everything. But Oliver is all I have." I was about to respond when Oliver suddenly rushed over. He shoved me aside, helped Lila up, and pulled her gently into his arms. Glaring at me, he snapped, "Elena, have you no shame? I already agreed to marry you. Why are you making Lila kneel?" Seeing Oliver, Lila's eyes welled up with tears. She melted weakly into his embrace, crying like a delicate flower, a really pitiable sight. "Oliver, you can't marry her. I'm carrying your child. Our baby can't grow up without a father." Oliver was overjoyed at her words. He wiped her tears away and softly touched her stomach. "Don't cry, Lila. You'll upset the baby. Don't worry, I'll only ever marry you." Then he turned to me, his tone full of contempt. "Elena, I'm calling off the wedding. Since you've been chasing me all these years, I'll do you a favor and let you be the one to dump me. Go explain to everyone that you found someone else and don't want to marry me anymore. You can keep the dowry, but I want every cent of the bride price my family gave you returned." His audacity made me laugh out loud. Without another word, I swung my arm and slapped him twice across the face. Crack. Cracked. The sound was so sharp that guests quickly gathered around. In front of everyone, I pointed at Oliver and unleashed my fury. "Oliver, if you had just said you fell in love with someone else and wanted out, I might have respected you. But trying to pin this on me. You think I'm some pushover? You're a cheating bastard." "She's a homerfecker, and that little bastard on the way. May the three of you live miserably ever after. Listen carefully, Oliver, even if you begged to marry me now, I wouldn't have you." I ripped off my veil and threw it in his face. Then I turned and walked away without looking back. Soon, the hashtag Oliver dumps Hawthorne heiress for love began trending, but instead of bashing the cheater, most netizens mocked me. My parents were furious, cursing the Vaughns for being heartless and netizens for having no sense of justice. Just as they gathered PR teams to draft a response, a handwritten apology letter titled "In Support of Elena" shot to the top of the trending topics. It was from Gabriel Vaughn, the family patriarch and Oliver's uncle. In the letter, he condemned Oliver's behavior, praised me as intelligent, decisive, and a model of modern nobility, and announced the family's decision. Oliver was stripped of all authority and suspended indefinitely. My dowry would be returned in full, and the bride price would be doubled as compensation for emotional damages. The letter was sincere and firm, completely unlike Gabriel's usual cold, reserved image netizens, but a completely public opinion swung in my favor. And Oliver became the villain, and my parents were thrilled and prepared generous gifts, insisting I thank Gabriel in person since the Vaughns and Hawthornes had close business ties. I went to the Vaughn estate, but as soon as I entered, I ran into Oliver. His face was still swollen. Clearly, my slaps were the only ones he'd received that day. I couldn't help but laugh, and he noticed. He hurried over, grabbed my arm, and said with overconfidence, "Elena, I knew you'd come see me. I'm sorry I lost my temper today. My parents already punished me. People like us, family comes first. How could I let love cloud my judgment? I really have learned my lesson. I'll marry you. I'll keep Lila on the side. I'll be the rightful Mrs. Vaughn." How does that sound? My fists clenched again. I flexed my wrists and smiled coldly. Oliver, did those slaps not hurt enough? He instinctively covered his face and snapped, Elena, don't push your luck. Everyone knows you're the woman. Oliver Vaughn rejected. What noble son would ever want you now? Seeing me about to lunge at him, he quickly backtracked. All right, fine, I'll even have Lila's child brought back for you to raise. Why bother with a mistress who can't even keep her own child? What's there to compete over? I couldn't hold back any longer. I grabbed him by the collar and punched him hard, yelling. I said I'm not marrying you. Are you deaf or just stupid? I was right in the middle of laying into him when a cool, detached voice came from behind me. Elena, come here. I turned and saw Gabriel. He was leaning against a gilded pillar, casually spinning a sandalwood rosary between his slender fingers. His gaze was sharp and distant, his expression icy just like in the previous life. He carried that untouchable, arrogant aura that always made me nervous around him. I let go of Oliver, picked up the gifts from the floor, and walked over to Gabriel. Uncle, I said respectfully, follow me. He replied tersely, then turned and headed upstairs. Once inside his study, he spoke, his tone frosty. I didn't realize Elena was still so infatuated with my nephew. It seems my letter was written in vain. I was completely baffled. What are you implying, Uncle? He frowned slightly. You brought all these gifts. Didn't you come to reconcile with Oliver? I felt deeply insulted. Do I really look that pathetic to you? My parents made me bring these to thank you. I shoved the gifts into his hands and turned to leave, but he caught my wrist. A faint, almost invisible smile touched his lips. My apologies. Just you've always been so devoted to Oliver, determined to marry him. I assumed this time you would also compromise for the sake of peace. I snorted. After everything he did to me in our past life, you think they'd jump back into that fire? He stared at me, his eyes widening in shock. Past life? You've also reborn? We looked at each other. Everything clicked. Compared to Oliver's vicious scheming in the previous life and his idiocy today, we concluded he probably hadn't reborn. Right then, Gabriel and I formed an alliance. We would join forces to take down Oliver and repay him for a lifetime of suffering. The day of the Vaughn family matriarch's birthday banquet arrived. The Vaughns and Hawthornes had been close for generations, so my whole family was invited. I'd always been clever and sweet-tongued, and Grandma Vaughn had always had a soft spot for me. In fact, my engagement to Oliver had been arranged by her and my grandfather before we were even born. When Grandma Vaughn learned about Oliver's recent disgraceful behavior, she was livid. The moment she saw me at the banquet, she pulled me aside, showered me with concern, and spent a good while cursing Oliver out. But Oliver was acting completely out of character. He didn't argue or defend himself. He just kept his head down and apologized throughout the party. He hovered around me like an annoying fly, showering me with awkward attentions. Grandma Vaughn loved opera, so the banquet even included a performance by a traveling troupe. In the middle of the act, Oliver unexpectedly appeared on stage dressed in the bold costume of a martial hero. He performed an aria from the Feast of Peaches as a birthday tribute to his grandmother, making her laugh with delight. When he finished, he pulled out an exquisite velvet box as if from thin air. He walked straight toward me, opened the box, and went down on one knee. Elena, I know I've done terrible things. I was wrong. This is the Vaughn family heirloom made glass-type jade bracelet with natural green veins. It's been passed down through every eldest daughter-in-law for generations. I want to use it to ask for your forgiveness. Today is Grandma's birthday. Can you give her face and forgive me just this once? The bracelet was exquisite, translucent, pure, with elegant green hues. It was clearly priceless. The crowd watched eagerly, whispering excitedly. My would-be mother-in-law chose that moment to speak up. Elena, in families like ours, many couples marry for alliance, not love. You and Oliver grew up together. You have a deep foundation. Imagine how happy you could be as husband and wife. He made a small mistake before the wedding. The kind many men make, but he's learned it his lesson. Your Uncle Gabriel and I will keep a close eye on him. I promise he will never betray you again. Her earnest plea drew nods and murmurs of agreement from the crowd. Even Grandma Vaughn seemed to soften. She looked at me and Oliver with affection and said, Elena, I've watched you and Oliver grow up side by side. It would break my heart to see you to go your separate ways. How about this for my sake? Give the boy one more chance. Test him for a year or so. If he truly reforms, then you can consider marrying him. How does that sound? The three of them had orchestrated this perfectly straight-up emotional blackmail. I was mentally scrambling for a polite way to delay things without damaging family relations. Then, a calm, cool voice came from the corner of the room. Mother. Let's not forget that woman outside is carrying Oliver's child. Lena is like a granddaughter to you. Would you really want her to go through the same hardships you once endured? The moment these words were spoken, Grandma Vaughan's face changed. The memory of when Oliver's grandfather passed away when the mistress showed up with his illegitimate son. Fighting for power and inheritance was still vivid. That was a thorn buried deep in Grandma Vaughan's heart. No one dared mention it. Except her favorite youngest son, Gabriel. She was silent for a long moment, then finally said slowly, I spoke too carelessly earlier. Oliver, settle matters with that woman and the child properly first, then we can discuss you and Elena. Oliver opened his mouth to argue, but Grandma Vaughan just waved her hand warily, said she was tired, and retired to her bedroom. From the corner, Gabriel watched Oliver's suppressed fury with an amused smirk. After leaving the Vaughan estate, I drove to meet my best friend. Just as I parked and was heading toward the elevator, the garage lights suddenly went out. I pulled out my phone to use as a light, but a large hand clamped over my mouth and nose from behind. A strong chemical smell filled my nostrils and everything went black. Freezing water splashed over my head, shocking me back to consciousness. When I opened my eyes, I found myself tied up and thrown in an abandoned factory. Lila stood over me, holding an empty bucket in one hand and slapping my face repeatedly with the other. Seeing I was awake, she smirked triumphantly. Elena, you're finally up. We're putting on quite a show today and you're the star. Soaked and stinging from the blows, I glared up at her. Lila, are you out of your damn mind? Oliver and I called off the engagement. We have no beef. Why are you doing this? She screamed like a madwoman. Stop playing innocent, you scheming bitch. In our past life, Oliver loved me so much he visited my grave every day, swore he'd marry me in the next life. But now in this life, he wants to hide me away as his mistress. Today he even tried to force me to get an abortion. This has to be your doing. You're playing hard to get, twisting everything, acting all pure since you love acting so much. Today 5 strong men will star with you in a very adult film. Let us see if the Vaughans still want you. After that she laughed wildly. Hysterically so. Lila had also reborn. 5 thuggish men walked in. The leader leered. The moment he saw me he forced my jaw open and shoved a pill down my throat. Then he untied me, his rough hands already roaming everywhere. The stench of sweat and foul breath surrounded me. I struggled desperately but my limbs felt like lead. Then the heat began. The drug taking effect. I dug my nails deep into my palm, using the pain to cling to awareness, but my mind was already drifting. I heard fabric tearing, camera shutters clicking, their crude comments and ugly laughter just before desire completely consumed my reason. I thought I saw Oliver. He burst into the factory, kicked Lila to the ground, and his bodyguards swarmed in to subdue the thugs. He walked over, wrapped his jacket around me, and lifted me gently into his arms. Then he snatched the camera from Lila and carried me outside. In the car, with my last shred of clarity, I begged him, Oliver, please take me to a hospital. But he stared at my flushed skin, his eyes darkening. He swallowed hard, his voice low and rough. Elena, you don't need a hospital. Let me be your cure. Once we're together, especially if a child comes, you'll have to marry me. He leaned in, pressing me down against the seat. I panicked, fighting back. But my body was limp and burning under the drug's influence. As I struggled, I heard him whisper, Elena, even if we've been reborn, you can't escape me. Oliver had also reborn. I woke in a soft, large bed. The room was decorated like a luxury hotel. It was completely silent. No one else was there. The soreness all over my body, and the faint throbbing between my legs, were brutal reminders of the night's intensity. The thought that I'd been with Oliver again, that I might still be tied to him in this life, filled me with despair. Just as I was pounding the pillows in frustration, the bathroom door opened. A man stepped out, steam billowing around him, a towel wrapped low around his hips. His chest, abs, and V-line were completely exposed. It was Gabriel. My eyes widened. Uncle, why are you here? Usually composed, Gabriel now seemed flustered. He stammered, unable to form a sentence. Then it hit me. My mouth moved faster than my brain. Uncle, was it you who helped me last night? Gabriel's face flushed deep red. He looked panicked. You were in so much pain. I lost control. Elena, I'm sorry. I took your first time when you weren't conscious. I will take responsibility. I limped before he could finish. I sprang out of bed and threw my arms around him. Thank goodness it was you. I'm so glad it was you. My sudden outburst left him stunned. Slowly, he raised his arms and held me gently as our skin touched. Fragments of memory rushed back. Gabriel smashing a car window, pulling me from Oliver's arms, holding me, whispering soft comforts. Me clinging to him, begging for relief from the heat, him finally giving in, our bodies tangled in passion. Now, seeing myself half-dressed and him shirtless, I was overwhelmed with embarrassment. I quickly let go and hid back under the covers. I'm just glad it was you and not Oliver. I was this close to repeating the same terrible mistakes when I looked up. Gabriel was gazing at me with deep tenderness, a smile he couldn't hide in his eyes. The tension between us was so thick I could barely breathe. Flustered, I quickly changed the subject. By the way, isn't it wild that both Oliver and Lila are reborn? We'll have to be extra careful from now on. Reborn Oliver won't be easy to deal with. Gabriel's expression turned serious. I have a plan for dealing with Oliver, don't worry. Elena, in this life, I won't let him lay a finger on you soon. I learned what Gabriel's plan entailed. We deduced that Oliver must have regained his memories around the time of Grandma Vaughn's birthday banquet. Having lived to lives, he now realized that someone from a modest background like Lila could offer him no advantage. She was only fit to be a mistress. I, on the other hand, was the key to securing the support of both the Vaughn and Hawthorne families. Only by marrying me could he climb to the top of the power structure, just like he did in our previous life. But what if he discovered that Lila could also be useful to him? I had a feeling he would marry her without hesitation. Locking the scumbag and the home wrecker together, that was the first step in Gabriel's plan for revenge. A few days later, news spread that the Montgomery family from Northwood had found their long-lost daughter. The Montgomerys were a powerful, influential family, exactly the kind Vaughn had been eager to partner with, and the lost daughter they had found was Lila. When my profit-obsessed former father-in-law learned that Lila was now the Montgomery heiress, he immediately started pressuring Oliver to marry her. His white moonlight had become a golden phoenix, flawless in every way. I expected Oliver to jump at the chance to make her his wife. Instead, he fiercely opposed it, swearing he would marry no one but Elena. Is this guy out of his mind? One day, as I was leaving the office, Oliver cornered me. He grabbed my hand, his voice urgent. Elena, marry me please. I shook him off. What's this act for? At the mention of Lila, his face twisted with hatred. Don't talk to me about that bitch. The timing of that pregnancy doesn't add up. Who knows whose bastard she's trying to pin on me? I couldn't hold back a scornful laugh. But if I recall, Oliver enjoys bringing outside women home and letting outside men sleep with his wife. You cheat on her, she cheats on you. You two are a match made in heaven. Oliver looked pained. Elena, I was wrong. I shouldn't have treated you like that in our past life. I was obsessed with Lila back then. Her death had put her on a pedestal in my mind. But living again, I see the truth. The illusion shattered. I was in love with a fantasy. The real her is disgusting. But you, Elena, losing you last time destroyed me. I finally saw how wrong I was. When I opened my eyes in this life and saw you again, you have no idea how happy I was. Elena, marry me. Give me a chance to make up for everything. He moved closer, trying to pull me into his arms. Suddenly, a sharp, commanding figure stepped between us. It was Gabriel. His dark eyes burned with fury as he landed a solid punch on Oliver's face, sending him stumbling backward. Gabriel hit him again, growling, "Stay away from Elena. I'll beat you every time I see you." Oliver was no match for him. He could only slink away in defeat after that. Under pressure from both the Vaughn and Montgomery families, Oliver had no choice but to marry Lila. At their wedding, Oliver's eyes kept drifting toward me. It wasn't until Gabriel stepped deliberately into his line of sight that he finally looked away, resentful. During the toast, I heard him mutter to Gabriel, "Don't get too comfortable, uncle. This isn't over." After marriage, backed by the Montgomery family's influence, Oliver's rise was swift and dazzling. He secured shares from his father and bought out several minor shareholders. He rapidly became the second largest stakeholder in Vaughn, rivaling Gabriel himself amid the constant flattery. Oliver grew increasingly arrogant, bolstered by Montgomery capital. He charged through Northwood's business world like a runaway stallion for a time. Oliver was the industry's rising star, even more dominant than in our previous life. At a shareholders' meeting, he clashed with Gabriel over several investment projects. Oliver slammed the table, rallied his supporters, and publicly overthrew Gabriel's proposals. The times have changed. You ray nothing but a loser now, he sneered before laughing arrogantly and walking out at a business cocktail party. He cornered me in a hallway. Elena, Gabriel is no match for me. You backed the wrong horse. He taunted. You really hadn't learned a thing, even after a second life. Why not become my mistress? We can pick up where we left off. I didn't bother responding. Instead, I drove my stiletto heel into his foot, kicked him hard, and walked away. He didn't follow, just shouted after me. Think it over, Elena, my bed will always have a spot for you, just you wait. Oliver, your time is running out. It didn't take long for the consequences of Oliver's reckless investments to surface. Those Northwood projects, that had initially brought him massive profits, began to falter. A few, impacted by newly introduced policies, were terminated before they even began. Every penny Oliver had invested early on was wiped out. He went to the Montgomery family demanding answers. The eldest Montgomery heir advised him to be patient, explaining it was a strategic move by higher-ups to keep others from snatching a piece of the pie. He even claimed to have insider information, insisting the project would inevitably be revived soon. A few days later, Lila told him, during a family dinner today, I overheard my eldest brother whispering to Dad. They said that project you invested in is now open for additional funding. Even more money into it. Oliver couldn't sit still after hearing that. He immediately flew to Northwood. He used every asset he could mobilize to increase his investment, but his available funds were running low even if it turned a profit later. After deducting the losses, he'd only make a marginal gain. Greed overrode his reason. He was destined for the top. How could he be satisfied with such meager returns? So, he mortgaged all his shares in bond to Montgomery in exchange for cash, which he funneled entirely into the project. In his mind, it made perfect sense. As Montgomery's son-in-law, they were all family. The share mortgage was just a formality. If the investment truly failed, wouldn't Montgomery have to return his shares? What he never saw coming was that this was all a trap meticulously set by Gabriel. Years ago, Gabriel had taken over the Vaughn Group from his brother. Oliver's father, Gabriel, was the largest shareholder and the nominal head of Vaughn. But Oliver's father had held power for years and had many loyal supporters, leaving Gabriel with limited control in their previous life. Oliver exploited this very weakness to seize power from Gabriel. Knowing this was his Achilles heel, Gabriel began laying the groundwork early in his life. Years earlier, he had saved the life of the Montgomery patriarch, who then acknowledged him as a sworn son. Their private relationship was exceptionally close. This time, Gabriel asked Montgomery to help him, and the old man gladly agreed. Lila's identity as the long-lost Montgomery heiress was only temporary. A role went to her solely to pressure Oliver into marriage, pleased that his son could leverage the Montgomery family's influence. Oliver's father willingly transferred his shares to Oliver. The special favor Montgomery showed Lila further convinced Oliver he was untouchable as the prized Vaughn heir. Now strengthened by his marriage into Montgomery, he grew complacent and overconfident. Step by step, he took the bait and found himself trapped beyond escape. When Gabriel and I first formed our alliance, he told me, crushing him when he's down would be easy, but it wouldn't be satisfying. I'll help him climb to the peak, and watch him fall from the clouds shattered and broken beyond recognition. That will be far more satisfying. And far more fatal. As expected, Oliver's investment failed completely. The project was hammered by one policy after another, leaving no chance of recovery. Oliver snapped. He dragged Lila to the Montgomery estate and caused a scene. He even forced his heavily pregnant wife to her knees, resorting to desperate, shameless tactics to reclaim the Vaughn shares he'd mortgaged. But the parents who had once doubted on Lila and now reacted completely differently. They threw a paternity test report in her face, accusing her of impersonating their daughter and threatening to sue her for fraud. Lila stood frozen, clutching the report. Initially, a man claiming to be a Montgomery steward had approached her, insisting she was their lost daughter. He'd even arranged a DNA test that confirmed she was the real deal. It was that report that gave her the confidence to claim her place in the family. Now, comparing that document to the one in her hands, she realized the original was riddled with errors in format and wording. What's more, no trace of that Stewart to be found anywhere in the Montgomery household. With no way to prove her story, Lila was thrown out alongside Oliver. Furious, Oliver beat Lila the moment they left the estate. As she struggled to escape, she missed a step and tumbled down a staircase. Blood pooled beneath her instantly. The child, whose father was never known, was lost due to severe hemorrhaging. Lila had to undergo a hysterectomy, forever losing her chance to become a mother accustomed to power and influence. Oliver couldn't accept his failure. He turned to gambling, desperate to win back his former glory overnight, but he lost more than he won, sinking deeper into debt. As debt collectors swarmed, he offered Lila to them in exchange for patience. When she refused, he beat her without mercy. Even a cornered rabbit will bite, and Lila was far from harmless. Finally, during one of Oliver's brutal attacks, she grabbed a knife and stabbed him. Oliver quickly collapsed in a pool of blood, but Lila didn't stop. As if possessed, she stabbed him again and again until he was riddled with wounds, and so Oliver died at the hands of the very white moonlight he had spent a lifetime longing for. Lila was ruled to have acted in excessive self-defense and spared the death penalty, but the trauma shattered her mind. She would spend the rest of her life in a psychiatric institution. Oliver's father and mother, unable to bear the shock, fell ill and passed away one after the other. Loss of power, bankruptcy, debt, the death of his parents, and finally his own life. The very tragedies that Gabriel and I endured in our past lives had now sharpened into a single, fatal arrow. It flew across time, piercing straight through Oliver's destiny. After Oliver's death, our lives returned to peace. Montgomery returned all of Vaughn's mortgaged shares, along with what remained of Oliver's investments, directly to Gabriel. Gabriel accepted the shares but returned the investments to Montgomery as a gesture of gratitude. The Montgomery patriarch, deeply impressed by Gabriel, began subtly matchmaking him with his own granddaughter wherever Gabriel appeared. The Montgomery heiress was never far behind. Photos of them together frequently trended online, and rumors of a Vaughan-Montgomery alliance through marriage began to swirl. Meanwhile, at 26 and still single, I found myself on the receiving end of my parents' increasingly creative attempts to marry me off. One day, another photo of Gabriel and the Montgomery heiress hit the unfortunately spotted by my mother. She thrust her phone in my face, her finger jabbing at the image. "Ayo, just look at Gabriel. He won his business war. Got himself a beauty, nothing gets past him, and then there's you." She suddenly pinched the soft skin on the back of my neck. A 26-year-old, past her prime woman, still pretending to be a precious antique vase. Your high school classmate's second kids are already buying soy sauce. Your college roommate just had a full month ceremony for her second marriage. Even your nearsighted cousin matched with a sperm donor last week. Why don't you just copy and keep the child and forget the father? At least let me hold a grandchild before my 60th birthday. Her rant was getting out of hand. I couldn't take it anymore. "Mom, Theodore is waiting for me. I'm going to be late, gotta go." The moment she heard Theodore's name, her eyes lit up. She practically held me down to dress me up until I looked every bit the elegant, dignified daughter of a wealthy family, before finally letting me leave. Theodore was a university classmate who had pursued me back then, but because of my engagement to Oliver, he eventually gave up. He'd been building his career abroad after graduation. Hearing I'd called off the wedding, he'd returned and launched an intense campaign to win me over. I turned down his invitations countless times. I only agreed this time, probably because my mother's words struck a nerve. After our revenge was complete, the ties between Gabriel and I should have been severed. If Gabriel had moved on, how could I stay stuck in the past? I buried my sense of loss and patiently listened to Theodore talk, but my mind was wandering. His lips moved, yet I heard nothing until he suddenly grabbed my hand and said earnestly, "Elena, give me a chance. Will you be my girlfriend?" The sudden proposal startled me. I froze, forgetting to pull my hand back. Suddenly, Gabriel appeared beside our table. He roughly seized Theodore's hand and flung it away, glaring at him. A cold smirk touched his lips. "Theodore, I suggest you do your homework before pursuing someone. Don't aim above your station. My fiancé is beyond your reach." Theodore wouldn't dare provoke Gabriel. Pale-faced, he stumbled away. Gabriel slid into the booth next to me, caging me in with his arms. His eyes swept over me, amused. all dressed up for a date with another man. Elena, you've outdone yourself. His interference annoyed me. I shoved him back. Gabriel, what right do you have to interfere? What are we to each other? He looked genuinely surprised by the question. That night, I promised I would take responsibility. I said I would marry you. You said you were glad it was me. We're talking about marriage. Don't you think that gives me the right? I let out a scornful laugh, pulled up the trending photo, and shoved my phone in his face. This doesn't look like your fiancé to me. Uncle. He snatched the phone, scrutinized the hot search and cursed angrily. Those idiot reporters. They don't know a damn thing and just write whatever. Then he turned me by my shoulders, his expression deadly serious. Elena. I swear I've never done anything to betray you. I never would, and I never will. The Montgomery patriarch did try to set me up with his granddaughter. But I refused on the spot. The reason we've been seen together so much is because she fell for my secretary at first sight. We've all been busy, so she tags along with me to snatch moments with him. The gloom that had clouded my heart for days instantly lifted. Trying to sound calm, I said, all right. I understand. But he pinched my cheek playfully. Just smile if you want to, my jealous little lady. I stayed defiant. Who's jealous? I am not jealous. He softened his voice. Fine, I'm the jealous one, okay? Seeing him hold your hand, and you not pulling away, I was going insane, so I decided. He suddenly took my left hand and slipped a ring onto my ring finger. Elena, I've loved you for 2 lifetimes now. Will you marry me? I could no longer hide my joy. I smiled and nodded. The scars of revenge had healed within the rings of time. The roots entangled across 2 lifetimes had finally grown into intertwining branches.